Hey everyone, what is happening? I hope you're having a incredible day and hopefully a great week so far. Thanks so much for hanging out with me this week with Unscrambled Faith, and I'm your host Megan Clark. Just thanks so much for hanging out with y'all. Hope you had a great Easter weekend, no matter what that looks like for you, whether you spent the time with your fur babies like we did, or if you spent that time with family or with friends. I know that some of y'all may not necessarily be as fortunate that you may had to work, but all the same, I hope you had an incredible weekend, no matter what that looks like for you. But thanks so much for hanging out with us. I am very excited. We have This is the one of two left of the series this month of growth, renewal, purpose, redefining, honestly, who we are. Springtime, once again, is one of those perfect times for growing the seeds and purpose, right? I've spent some time throughout this series through this month of April talking and diving a little bit more into what it looks like when we've planted the seeds right through the beginning of the year, from like the end of last year until, give or take maybe like February, March. Maybe perhaps you're in a season of life where you're still tilling and you're still, mending and paying attention and making sure that you're growing with purpose and perhaps the seeds that have been planted, and you're not quite ready for growth. But that's okay, because I firmly believe that it is not by mistake that you are either viewing this video, this podcast on either YouTube, or excited to announce that I'm officially moving my video content as well to Spotify too. So to each their own. If you want to see full video content, I completely understand if you want to stick around with YouTube. However, I know that there are a lot of times when I have things that I'm busy doing, whether it's laundry, dishes, maybe perhaps running errands. And let's be honest, we want to be safe out on the road when you're driving. That is a fact. So if that's the case and you're like me, I love listening to podcasts while I'm out on the road running errands, then perhaps Spotify might be for you. I'm actually in the middle of, as I'm recording this, I'm actually in the middle of moving all of the past podcasts from the last 6-7 months plus over to Spotify. So if you by chance are going to hop on over there, just bear with me. I'm a one girl show, one person show over here, so I'm actually getting ready to move the rest of them over to Spotify. However, if you are watching this live or watching the replay with me on YouTube, thank you so much for hanging out. But let's go ahead and dive in. So we are piggybacking off of Easter weekend. Happy Resurrection Week. We're about to close it out fairly soon. We're actually midweek through the week right now. And today we're going to dive in a little bit more and talk about stepping into the version of you that God has designed. So before we go ahead and dive in, as always, again, if you're on Spotify, you may not necessarily be able to see this, but all the more reason to come hang out with us on YouTube. But I just want to show off my earrings, as we always do traditionally. I want to show off my earrings with you guys. I love the sheer fact that these are clear cubes. In fact, if you are listening to this as we speak on Spotify, I will just describe them to you. So my earrings that I'm wearing today are squares. They honestly look like, in my opinion, like little ice cubes. Very unique, but honestly, I love the sheer fact that they are clear. It's different. It's unique, very summer-like, as my therapist told me today, and I'm here for it. And honestly, in full transparency, I didn't really put a lot of thought into picking out the earrings. On the contrary of what some of y'all might believe, I picked out my outfit first, and then I just chose a pair. Didn't really honestly put more thought into which hat I was going to wear today, more than the earrings. But here we are. So let's go ahead and dive in, get started. So when we're talking about stepping into the version of you that God has designed, we definitely want to bring attention to the season of change that you might find yourself in right now. And again, it's going to look different for everybody, right? So the season of change that we're in is going to look different for everybody because we are different people from one another, right? So no matter what season you're in, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about that. So let's talk about how we can handle change with the season that we're in. How are you stepping into something new? So, when I think of springtime, I think of renewal, right? I think that we, again, that, through the fall winter season, again, we've had rest, we've, hopefully have recuperated to, whatever degree that means for us, that we have, found a sense of purpose in the beginning of this year, maybe something new that we want to try, or something new that we've done, or maybe perhaps that we're working intentionally on ourselves and we're entering a new season of maybe redefining who we are, or rediscovering perhaps something that at one point or another brought us joy, brought us happiness. But if you're stepping into something new this season, or maybe perhaps if you're not necessarily stepping into something new, it could be that the fact that you are ending something, that you're in a weird, maybe even like a weird in-between space, right? That you're not quite yet on the brink of wanting to try something new, but you're still maybe holding on a little bit onto something that you feel within your spirit, within your gut, that spirit's telling you that the end is nearing, right? Whatever that may be, whether it's maybe a past hang up that you've been holding on to, or a past grudge, or maybe it's a friendship that has blossomed, has, served its purpose, but you can feel it within your spirit that that season of that friendship is coming to an end. Or maybe perhaps it's a job that you've had for quite some time that you're not getting fulfilled from anymore, that you've done all that you can do, and that you feel that there's something new that's on the brink. Maybe perhaps that's something, that you're in between and trying to decide on. But whatever the case may be, let's think about what's a recent transition that you walk through. So if you're, if we're talking about maybe something new that you recently tried, something new that you're embracing, or if you're one of those that are in that season of life that you're walking away for something, or you're letting go of something, or maybe perhaps that in your heart of the heart that there's something that you're still holding on to that you need to bless and release, but you haven't quite yet, because maybe it could be, friend, that your heart's not prepared yet to release it. Or maybe it could be that, I've talked about before that there are things that I've struggled with and that I went through in my past that I ultimately felt like if I held on to it for long enough that I had the power, but it did have the power over me. Is there something that maybe perhaps that you've experienced in your past that's still weighing heavy on your shoulders, that you're still carrying that burden with you, that you haven't necessarily released and given it to God? So for me, like personally, when I think about when it comes to, a recent transition that I'm walking through and how did I see God in it, one of the things that I think about is how I'm entering into a new season where I'm leaning into showing up for my husband. Over the last couple of years, as I've shared with you guys, have been in therapy for quite some time now. And what's interesting for me is I feel like that I've had a full circle moment where I'm now more mentally present to be able to stand in the gap for my husband. What does that look like? That looks like being that, for one, that means being the hands and feet of Jesus to my spouse. That means that I am not necessarily going to neglect my own needs and filling my own cup up and continuously being a better version of myself. That doesn't mean that I'm letting any of that go. What it means is that I've healed and I'm constantly healing, but I'm at a healthier place for me to be able to be coherent and to stand strong, and for me to be more or less like a pillar for my husband, for him to be able to lean into a season I feel like that he's in currently of healing his inner child. I feel like that the work that I've done over the last couple of years, I feel very blessed and honored to be able to be kind of on the other side of that, to where now I can provide enough grace for him to be able to heal, that inner child, and to maybe perhaps rediscover the things that are making him happy all over again, that once made him happy when he was a kid. It could be, when it looks like that he's had a tough day, that I'm able to mentally show up for him in a space that is authentic, and for me to be able to provide enough faith and grace and guidance to make sure that he knows that this is a place that our home is somewhere that he can go to just be himself, and to let his guard down, and for him to know that it's a safe space, that constantly finding ways that I'm not taking for granted, like thanking him for how hard he works for a family. A lot of times I feel like texting him or sending him small messages like that are not really, in the past I would have thought, are not really that big of a deal. I would have overlooked it. I would have been like, he knows that I'm proud of him. He knows how much I love him. He knows that I'm so blessed for how hard he works, or that I'm proud, to be his wife, or, whatever the case may be. But I've realized that just as much as he's checked in on me over the last couple of years, and the ways that he's showed up for me, it's equally as important for me in this season of our life, of my life, to show up for him. Now it's my turn. And I feel like that's truly like what God wants for us. God wants for us to be there for our neighbor, right? He wants us to lend a helping hand to those, not only when they're down, but maybe perhaps when they're in a different season than us. I talk about a lot how it's important for me to have a friendships, people within like my inner circle, where it's like this give and take, right? Where there are seasons of my life with my friendships, with my best friends, that I can think of that I've had a tough season, and then they're in a healthier, more solid place where they're able to stand in the gap for me. And then it's just push or pull, because then there comes a time where the script has flipped, and then I'm able to show up for them, and I'm able to support them in their time of need. I feel like that goes just the same as for our spouses, for our partners. I feel like it goes the same. I feel like that, as much as I'd like to believe that we can be there for each other at the same time all the time, that's, to me, and I just don't see where that's possible. It's just not possible. And I feel like that if it was, I firmly believe we're not being authentic, that we're forcing something that is just not going to naturally happen. I love the fact that him and I recently talked about how, I talked about recently with a friend of mine how I'm leaning and like really learning more about like masculine energy, feminine energy. I realize now that there's kind of it's so important really for me to hone in on like not only how I'm feeling every day, checking in with myself every day, but also, processing like, is this going to be a day where I really need him to show up for me, or I need to just be there for myself? Or is it going to be like, oh, I'm having a good day, or, a good week, whatever that looks like. And then how can I show up for him? How can I just check in with him and let him know, like, hey, I'm just thinking about you. Because I think it's little reminders like that can honestly, in an instant, turn our attitude around, turn our vibe around. I love so much that there are moments, it seems like almost every day, maybe not every day, but it feels like every day, that God puts somebody's name on my heart. Whether it is my husband, whether it's a friend, whether it's a family member, whether it's somebody that I work alongside in my business, in my line of business. And I feel like that whenever God puts that name on our heart, it's not up to us to understand. It's not up to me personally to understand like the why. I feel like that instantly know in that moment, like what I'm supposed to do with that person, whether it's maybe like send them a quick text or pray for them, or show up for them, in whatever way that looks like. If that's the case, then it's important for us to be present in the moment, pause, and give enough time to be like, okay, God, I know that you have put so and so's name on my heart. And even though I'm not really sure the direction of what you're wanting me to do with this person's name, I know that when the time's right, God's going to lead me in the direction of what's supposed to happen because I trust him. I trust him. I know that I'm in a season of showing up for my husband in a way that we are strengthening our friendship, that I'm able to stand firm and not only like my feelings, but to have more of an open understanding that I don't want to get so like lost in my head of predetermining like how things are going to play out, or assuming what he's thinking or what he's feeling. But I know that through the process that I've had, like through the last couple of years of working more on myself, being intentional with that, showing up through therapy, mending and working on my relationship with God, making that sure that that's healthy, showing up for myself and being more present and being aware of like time in itself. I know that those things have helped me to have more of like a clear headspace, so that way I can show up, for him when he needs me the most. Who are you letting define you? Are you still carrying labels from your past? How about opinions from others? Are you carrying an opinion from somebody that they gave you a long time ago? Is there a label that somebody has put on you that you are still carrying that burden, that you feel like that specific name or that specific identity you've latched onto, and that is a piece of who you are? Or are you starting to see yourself the way that God sees you? So one label that I had to personally let go of, in this time that I'm in my life. So one thing that I got to talk about today with my therapist was that the first thing that came out of my mouth was I told her that my physical therapist, because I started seeing a physical therapist and I have other doc's appointments coming up. So I'm just trying to get down to the bottom line of what's going on with me physically. Because when I tell you on a side note, there are a slew of things that are happening with your girl. However, I wanted to break it down into increments and figure out, okay, well, these symptoms need to be addressed with this doctor and so on and so forth. So some of the things that are going on with me physically, I knew that at some point I was going to need to go to a physical therapist, right? So I had my first consultation yesterday and we're talking, through things, and the PT, the physical therapist is like, well, how active are you? What does your activity look like? And I couldn't help but laugh because I knew that based upon the strength training test, some of the tests that we were running together yesterday, so he could kind of like see where I'm at or maybe the things that we need to work on or address. I knew that for the most part, I really couldn't fake it till I made it. I knew that it was important for me to show up authentically. And y'all, I thought that when I first started seeing a therapist, I thought that was tough. No. Being in the same room with a physical therapist that I've never met before, that was tough because I had to be honest with myself and I had to be honest with him. But one of the things that I had said to him that I knew that today in therapy I had to correct, and I was so glad when it happened, is that yesterday in physical therapy, I made a note and said that I'm not active. And in my mind, when I thought about I'm not active, it's that I'm not showing up in a way of being active with activity. So I'm not, working out, right? And I know that about myself. I know well within like the last 2 years that I have definitely given more time to food, to traveling, to my incredible job, to my friends, everything else. Now, I will say that there are certain parts of my health that have more than enough come a long way. I've made progress, but it could be better. Could be better. So one of the things I was talking today about with my therapist from my appointment yesterday was the fact that, yes, that is correct. I am not actual when it comes to physical activity. I'm not active, and I know that that needs to change. However, I am active, but in a very different light. So I do have things that I do on a weekly basis. I know that, yes, I do enjoy being a homebody, but I do have, for the most part, an active lifestyle. I have things that I have on the books that I do with my friends once a month. I have things that I host. I host some of my friends once a month. I go to my friend's house at their place another time during the month. Of course, y'all know I habitually go to therapy every single week. Come hell or high water, I'm always showing up to therapy. I mean, the only time I think that I've never made therapy, that I haven't made therapy, was either when I was out of town and I rescheduled, or I was just so sick that I absolutely could not get out of the house. That was an exception. Other than that, I don't know if there'll ever come a day when I'm not showing up to therapy, because I enjoy it so much, right? But when I think about like me being active, I mean, it is true. Like, I am an active person. I do have a social life. I'm an ambivert. I'll say that for sure. I'm an ambivert. So if you're not really quite sure what that is, it means that I'm not quite an extrovert, but I'm not quite an introvert. I'm kind of in between. And in my work life, I am hands down an extrovert. But in my personal life, those who actually like truly know me, that hang out with me, they know that for the most part, I'm much more comfortable in the pocket of being an introvert. So I know that by definition, yes, I am an active person. I have an active social life. However, I know that there are certain changes when it comes to like my physical health that I absolutely need to change. And the first thing and the first direction of that being is making these doctor's appointments. And as uncomfortable as it is, I need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and in a way that's showing up for me and showing up for my health. So what does that becoming look like for me right now? So what does it look like for me to, change the way that I'm being active? Again, that's, for me personally, that's starting with me working on my physical health. I've spent the last couple of years doing a lot of hard work and deep diving into my mental health. And I know that I have come a long way. As a matter of fact, it's been very enriching, very humbling for me to go back to past podcasts that I've had about 6-7 months back when I first started with this series with Unscrambled Faith. And for me to be able to hear pockets of me speaking from each video to make sure that, it does sound good, that it's running right, uploading it. Even when it comes down to like maybe the message, the text that describes the podcast in itself, I know without honestly even looking at all of that if I reflect briefly on the last couple of years, my mental health has come a long way. I've shown up for myself in a very different way. Growth has definitely taken place for sure. And I know at this point that there's no excuse, because I knew that a couple years ago, it was very important for me personally to work on my mental health first, and then I was going to address my physical health. Now, I know that some of y'all may not necessarily agree with that, and that's okay. But knowing how I am, knowing my habits, knowing my hang-ups, knowing, with my being very well in tune with my addictive personality, I knew based upon my past what works for me and what doesn't work for me. And I knew that in order for me to get on the right path that I need to be in to show it for myself and to just almost enter into like this next level, this better version of myself, it absolutely at this point has to do with my physical health. And as I'm learning, as I'm getting older, I'm now 36. I'll be 37 this year. So I know now, honestly, from like at least the past 5-6 years, at least, that things change, right? And there are certain things that I can't hold on to anymore that I was able to experience in my 20s, and my life looks different, and my activities look different, and my social calendar looks different. But that's okay because it's exciting and it's new and it's scary and it's, it does make me feel anxious, but also it is exciting and it's new, and it's a different season that of my life that I'm learning to lean into and embrace. So we'll see, y'all, because this week definitely kicked off, like I said, the start of at least a handful of doctor's appointments that'll be coming up over the next couple of months or so. So when we talk about becoming God, becoming who God designed us to be, it's not always pretty, right? One of the most powerful, enriching, beautiful things that I could possibly think about is the fact that God created you on purpose. He created you to be the exact person that you are. In fact, there are things, attributes, incredible traits about yourself that He has interwoven into your being that you haven't even touched on yet. There are levels that you have not even reached that are in the plan that He has for your life. It's just a matter of the waiting game, right? The waiting is the hardest because we want to leap, but we have to walk. We have to take baby steps. We have to walk before we leap, right? Growth has to take place. There's a maturity that has to happen. There's a hunger that has to take place. God wants us to know that we're hungry for wanting to show up, to be the best version of ourselves that we can be. That we want to work towards being as close to being like Jesus as possible. How do we do that? We take it one step at a time. We take one thing that we authentically want to work on ourselves, right? There's one thing about ourselves that we know in our heart without anyone else telling us otherwise. We know that there's one thing about us. Just take that one thing. Not more than one thing, just one thing. And I want you to reflect on it. What is that one thing that you want to improve on within yourself? Maybe there's perhaps something that, a version of yourself that you lost down the road, that you want to regain, right? That you want to get back to. That maybe perhaps there's something that once brought you joy that you haven't experienced in a while. So for me, for example, for myself, when it comes to one area that I'm growing in, even if it feels messy, is it showing up consistently. This season of my life, I am showing up not only consistently, that's hard to say, but vulnerably as well. Vulnerable in a way of, I have found great comfort in recording this podcast and uploading it to my YouTube channel. Now, don't worry if you have been following me on YouTube or you recently subscribed. Don't you worry, because I'm going to continuously upload these videos to YouTube. However, I'm entering into a different space and I'm becoming more vulnerable by entering into a podcast space, into somewhere else where this video content turns into audio. So then someone's not able to see me, right? So that's stripped away. And then all they're hearing is the vulnerability in my voice, right? It's exciting. It's new. It's something that I definitely taught myself, and I'm so incredibly proud of myself for. It's something that I have talked about with friends for, my gosh, maybe at least the last 2 years, maybe 3, at least the last 2 years, when it was kind of an idea. It was something that I had put a pin in. It was something that I was excited about, and I knew that I was like, okay, I was comfortable in front of the camera with my business. I knew that I could easily, for the most part, do this. I could record a video, but entering into a space where it is out of my comfort zone that I do feel vulnerable with. Is it scary? Hell yeah. You bet it is. But I love the fact that what I have to share, what's on my heart, the season of life that I'm in, the lessons that I've learned, I love the idea that there's somebody out there that is listening to this now, watching me now, that it's resonating with them. Because I know what it feels like when I hear a song, or I get to experience a church message, or a quote that I come across that inspires me. It fills my cup up. It lifts me up. It's that aha moment, right? That mind blown moment when we come across something that we know in our gut, in our spirit, that it was meant for us, that it wasn't by accident, that it crossed our path on purpose. Because not only were we intentional with the time that we were in, but we were present as well. And because we were present, we were able to experience that. My gosh, can you imagine if we didn't get to experience something like that? If there was something that God intended for us to maybe perhaps hear, or like a word that was supposed to be given to us, or a person that was supposed to cross our path, and for whatever reason, we were too busy and too caught up with all the things that we lost out on that opportunity. I mean, when I think about the friendships that I have, the people that have not only impacted my life, but I would hope that I've made an impact on as well. When I think that there could have been a very different story that was written, that perhaps that these people, these individuals didn't cross my path, or I didn't get the opportunity to share space with them. Oh, I don't even want to imagine that. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 17 ties in with exactly what we've been talking about. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old has gone, and the new is here. Friend, we're now in the midst of a season where there's renewal, there's growth. We're blossoming into a time where I want you to embrace the best version of yourself. I want you to know that it's okay with exactly where you're at. Now, you don't want to necessarily stay where you're at. Because now it's time for us to propel forward, for us to move forward, for us to pour our hearts into others. One of the things that I can share with you, if you're in a season of life where maybe perhaps you're going through a tough time, maybe perhaps if you've received some bad news recently, or you're struggling mentally, do one small thing today to bless somebody. Give them a compliment. Open the door for them. Maybe a simple text. It takes seconds to send a text to somebody and say, hey, I was just letting you know I'm thinking about you. You've been on my mind. That's it. Because the thing is that I feel like sometimes it's harder for us to sit in the feelings that we're experiencing, the season of life that, the heaviness that we're feeling, right? If you're going through a time like that, I find that sometimes it's easier for me to help somebody else out before I help myself out. But here's the thing, is that the more that you keep persevering, pushing forward, looking towards, there is a light, you guys. There is an end to the tough season that you're in. I promise you. We've all been there. We've all been there. And the thing is that there's not going to be just one tough season, right? Oh no, it's not that easy. But what's important is showing up for others, showing up for somebody else. Because the truth of the matter is, we've all had that one time in our lives, if not more than that, right? Where we didn't know if we were going to catch a break. We didn't know if things were going to get better, or if we were going to be the best version of ourselves, or perhaps the person that God intends for us to be. But just take one step forward. My challenge for you this week is I want you to write down or reflect on one new habit. Just one. And I'm speaking to you, little overachiever. Just one, okay? Even if you have to make a list and then pick one. Close your eyes and pick one, in fact. Or perhaps take an action that aligns with the person that God is shaping you to be. Oh, gosh, I love that. Take one step towards it. Just one step. It's important for us to look before we leap. Take one step before we jump ahead. Progress over perfection. Thank you so much for hanging out with me this week. Don't forget, as always, to unscramble your faith and find clarity in the chaos. One way, you guys, that you can help me so much is if you're hanging out with me on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss out on the new podcasts. I do typically record one new one a week. So if you don't want to miss out on whenever the new one is posted, be sure to not only click that little bell that you find at the top of this page, that you'll be alerted for up and coming new videos that are posted and shared out, but also feel free to share this with a friend as well. Means so much to me. And if you can drop a comment on this specific video and just kind of let me know where your head's at. Maybe perhaps if you feel like open to sharing what it is that you wrote down that you're wanting to reflect on for this week, I would greatly appreciate it. And if by chance you're catching this on Spotify, the way that you can get this, not only this account out and to help spread the message to others and to get this video out, is to not only subscribe and like this channel as well, but give me a rating as well. I would greatly appreciate it. But thanks so much for hanging out with me, and until next time, talk soon.